it's Steffi and welcome back to my channel. So today's video, I wanted to talk about what it was like to be a staff in public accounting. So I want to talk about what kind of job duties I performed and just my overall experience, things I wish I knew, some of the struggles that I went through, and hopefully by sharing this, you will either feel not so alone if you're currently going through a similar situation, or give you a little warning. Hopefully your experience is different than mine, but if not, at least it won't be a surprise. I had an internship about 2 years earlier, so I kind of knew what I was getting into, like kind of knew the work that I was gonna do, but as an intern, they're a little bit, I would feel like a little bit more lenient, or a little like make it seem a little bit more cushy than when I was a staff, because they want you to sign obviously afterwards. I didn't work ridiculously crazy hours when I was an intern. Like I don't think I worked past midnight when I was an intern, but at the same time I didn't mind because I was making overtime, so that wasn't a big deal. But once you start as a full-time professional in public accounting, you are then salary, so no matter how many hours you work, you just get paid your salary, unless a one-time bonus like an American Express card or something like that to show appreciation, but usually that's for like the really hard, tough engagements. But anyways, it's not about the money. So as a staff, what I worked on was the basic non-risky areas of an audit. So things like cash, inventory, fixed assets, expenses, and like revenue testing. If you haven't listened to my what is accounting and what is auditing mean video, I'm gonna link it in the cards because it'll make a little bit more sense. Areas where there are a lot more details involved, meaning having to look into like payment supports, going into a bank statement and seeing where money was coming out, or for revenue and looking for where money's coming in, and doing that for a selection of transactions for your specific client. So that could have ranged from 10, 5, could have been 25, could have been 100. A lot more of like that detailed, time-consuming work that wasn't necessarily risky or involved a lot of judgment. Either what the client says they paid for something is what matches the bank statement, or the money they say that came in matches the bank statement. It either matches or it doesn't match. And then, if it doesn't match, there's obviously more investigation that's done and follow up and stuff like that. But there's a lot less like subjectivity. You're still building your professional knowledge. You are also just getting comfortable with auditing in general. Like accounting is already complex on its own, but auditing is even more complex because you are making sure that what they've done according to GAAP standards is actually correct. So you have to know accounting and then also know how to test it, which you will learn more on the job when you go to training. You probably learned the concept of audit in college, but I promise you it'll start making more sense the more that you do it, the more that you have on-the-job experience, and the more trainings that you attend while you're at your firm. So I'm not gonna go into detail about like specific auditing things. If you have any specific questions, like if you're having a hard time grasping certain concepts like assertions or whatever, leave them in the comments below, and maybe I'll do more videos on that, trying to help you understand it a little bit better, like really talking in layman's terms, because sometimes segues into what I'm also talking about here. I felt like, and I had to remind myself of this later on when I wasn't a staff anymore, people above staffs like seniors and managers and partners and stuff, they're so busy and so wrapped up in trying to get certain things completed for the audit that they forget you're a brand new staff, or you only have like a year or two of experience and you don't know everything, and sometimes you don't know what you don't know. So to explain things in a bit more easier way to understand, I don't think everyone takes the time to do that, and sometimes you don't have time, I get it, but I just want y'all to know that that may happen. Things get busy and you have a purpose for when you do your audit. You're trying to finish it in a certain timeline because that affects your clients. Sorry, going off on a tangent. Learn to do a self-review before you submit any of your work papers. So typically when I would do a self-review, I would run spell check, first of all, on anything, whether it's an email, in an Excel file, in a Word document. So key. Go back and reread how you documented something. something. This is the way that you'll know if you've documented something well, is if another experienced auditor can look at the work that you've done and reperform it and get back to the same conclusion. That's when you know that you've documented something well. What is the specific support that I looked at? So invoice numbers, payment numbers, if it's a specific kind of report, naming that report, what system that report came from, who at the client provided it to you, so I'll usually put their name and their title, the amounts, but just be very specific and clear. So I like to go back and read over my work and just think to myself, does this make sense? Can someone else come back behind me and reperform this? And if not, then, you know, document a little bit more. Another thing is when it comes to emails. Sometimes there are emails that are distributed firm-wide or office-wide. If you're trying to reply or if you're trying to just send this to one specific person, make sure of who you're sending it to in the address field. Let's say you're trying to send it to Steffi. Make sure you're getting the right Steffi, because there could be multiple Steffis. Or be sure that you're not picking reply all. Before I send an email, I always read through it one more time. Is it clear about what I'm asking for? Sorry, the lighting. Especially when you're writing to a client and you're asking questions or asking them for support or something like that, keep in mind that although you may not see it or know exactly what your client does on a day-to-day basis, your client has a lot on their plate outside of just going through the audit that you're performing. Be conscious and mindful of people's time. Another thing that I had to learn and kind of get more comfortable with is actually going and talking to the client. Don't solely rely on email being the way you communicate to anyone. It's always good to have that face-to-face interaction. Some seniors are particular and they don't want their staff to go out and talk to the client until they know that that person is able to talk to the client on their own. Sometimes you'll go with your senior, but whenever you do go and talk to your client, build rapport, ask them how they're doing. Don't just be like, where's my support? Or can you get me this? Sometimes even just the little niceties of being like, good morning, how are you doing? Or even asking like, hey, I had a quick question. Do you have a few minutes, or would you like me to come back at another time? That definitely goes a long way. Rolling forward prior year work papers to the current year's planning document, and your senior may ask you to roll it forward. And so basically that's taking the prior year document and putting it into the new year's document. Make sure you go and verify and update any dates. The 2018 audit, and this is a 2017 work paper that you are rolling forward. Make sure you go through and you make sure that anything that says 2017 is changed to 2018. It's not just a copy paste exercise. If there are areas that need to be updated, for example, fraud inquiries, maybe highlighting that so that they know that needs to be updated. So the other thing that definitely helped me as a staff was staying organized. And I have a whole video about this, about how I stayed organized when I was in public accounting, because you have multiple projects going on at one time. So I'm gonna link that up in the cards. Be sure to stay organized and stay on top of what you have going on. Once you master at least your own organization, you'll be able to organize an engagement when you're a senior a lot easier. Other ancillary things that I would do: copy things, scan things, hole punch things, more administrative kind of work, because when you're on an audit team, we didn't have administrative people working on there. In the field, when you're doing the actual audit, sometimes that administrative work would fall on the person with the least amount of experience, ordering lunch or ordering dinner or going on coffee runs. And I know that kind of sounds demeaning. I get it. You went to college and you're ordering people food. I feel like I'm a waitress kind of thing. That feeling naturally came up because it's one of those things where you're like, oh, so this is what I'm doing with my job? To help you with that mindset, felt like for the first year of working, things were not connecting for me. I wasn't understanding the concepts of audit. It just wasn't connecting. Certain parts connected, but not everything connected. And you're still learning your firm's policies and procedures, what forms to use, what font color you should use, and standard things that you're supposed to be doing. So there's a huge learning curve when you first start. And I felt like the first year of being a staff especially was one of my hardest years, because it's such a big learning curve. I was still trying to study for the CPA exam and it wasn't really working out that well. I don't feel like I'm adding value. Well, then I had to sit myself down and just tell myself, you know what? I'm doing the best that I can. And please remember this and tell this to yourself as well. If you are truly doing the best that you can, then give yourself that credit. You're doing the best that you can. If getting food or hole punching stuff, if that is helping your team get through the audit because, you know, your senior obviously has more experience and they're dealing with more, you know, technical risky areas, if you can take this off of their plate, this is how you can add value. This is how you can help the team and be a team player, whether you are doing something like kind of glamorous and high profile in your audit, or if you're doing something not so much like getting food or getting coffee. If that's what you can do to help add value, then do that. And, you know, take pride in that, meaning don't be that person who is like, I'm gonna screw up this order so that they don't ask me to do this again. Definitely doesn't go with your own character and with your own integrity, I'm sure. You know, you don't wanna half-ass anything. So if you can build your work ethic by doing as great of a job as you possibly can in anything that you touch, whether that's administrative or not, that will build your skill set. That is a intangible skill set that I think is super valuable for even further on in your career. If you think of it from like a client's perspective, you as a staff are being billed at a lower rate because you have less experience, and your seniors, manager, partner, those people are being billed at a higher rate than you are. Think about it without putting any personal feelings there. Logically, it makes sense for you to do these things. I'm not saying that it's right or that this is ideal. I'm just giving you the facts of how it is. You won't have to continue doing this throughout your entire career, but at some point in time, you know, either there's gonna be other staff who can share the load. I promise you, if you're working with the right people, they will notice that. They will notice your dedication and your willingness to be a team player. People will want to work with you more because you have a great attitude. That is something that I look for whenever I was staffing my engagements, or if I was looking at people who I wanted to work with, I looked for people with great attitudes. I didn't look for people who knew everything, because I would much rather invest my energy, my time in someone who is a good person. I can teach you technical skills, and I know I've said this before, I can teach you how to audit. It is harder to teach someone if they're already closed-minded and they think they're better than other people. Okay, sorry, I went on a tangent there. I felt kind of lost for a good year. And it was nice because eventually it clicked. And once it clicked, I was like, oh, that makes sense. I understand why I'm doing X thing. I get what I'm trying to do in this test. Like at first I was like, what the hell are these assertions? Completeness and accuracy. Like, I don't know what, you know, what am I doing here? But I promise you it will click. And sometimes just learning the meaning of it isn't enough. Like, you should know the meaning of it, but being exposed to it over and over and over again, that will make it click for you. Stay focused, stay dedicated, and do your best to also learn. You have to be an active player in your career. And that means doing things like, which this might be redundant, but in case you guys are newer to my channel, things like taking notes. I know this is so like basic, but really take notes. Whenever your senior explains something to you and says, I want you to do this, this, and this thing on this work paper, take notes so that you know exactly what to do, because it'll show, like I said, that you take accountability and responsibility for your career development. If you take those notes and you do it, and you don't have to ask your senior like 5 times, what did you want me to do on this? What did you say you wanted me to do on this again? Like, obviously you can always ask clarifying questions, but if you're having to like repeat instructions over and over and over again, that is not great either. So that maybe you worked on this one area like cash for one client, so that on your next client, oh, how did I do deposits in transit? You know, you can refer back to your notes. Look something up in your audit manual or your policies and procedures, or you look something up on accounting standards or auditing standards, you know, saving those down so that you can refer back to them later on. Try to problem solve before you ask your senior or your manager. I try to do my research. I don't spin my wheels. You'll hear that a lot in public accounting. Don't spin your wheels. Take 5-10 minutes or so to try to figure out a solution to whatever it is that you're questioning. Looking guidance up, accounting standards, auditing standards in your audit manual. Like, actively try to figure something out, maybe asking a peer and just asking their opinion on something. But if you want confirmation, and I felt like I did this a lot, and I don't see anything wrong with it. I don't see anything wrong brainstorming with someone else and just verifying that your thought process is right, because that's how you build your confidence, you know, then go to your senior and your manager and say, this is what I think the solution or the action should be. Am I on the right track? That's a better way to approach questions than just being like, I don't know what I'm doing. You can expect to be on many different engagements with many different people, and hopefully you'll find that connection. It's totally normal to go from engagement team to engagement team to engagement team. Be very mindful and watchful of those people that you work with. You know, you will see so many different examples of seniors, of managers, of partners, of leaders in general, good and bad traits of any person. And just because you see someone at like a high level acting a certain way, either if that means talking badly about people, being passive aggressive towards people, being rude openly to someone, like that is not a good example of a leader or of someone who you should strive to be like based on your own moral character and whatnot. Take it as an opportunity to see the type of senior or manager or partner that you want to be in the future. You might find some good examples of like, wow, this person, I really respect how they handle themselves under pressure. I really enjoy like how personal they are and how they care about people. Or you might see people who are the opposite. Like, for example, when I was a staff, one of my seniors yelled at me for sending out a menu to a restaurant because we had been sitting there and it was probably already like 1 o'clock. Hurt my feelings a lot because number one, it was like totally uncalled for. Number two, it was done in front of other people. Like, I've always been the type to, if you want to praise, do that in public. If you want to constructively criticize, do that in private. Shocking to me. I was like, what the fuck? You know, in my brain. Brand new in my career. That was the first engagement I had been on during busy season, and it like really bothered me and hurt my feelings. And by the way, the senior never apologized. I hope that doesn't happen to any of y'all. I hope that like dumb stuff like that never happens. But that segues into, don't take anything personally. And I wish I had known this and had been able to tell myself this at the time. Is not a reflection of what I've done or that I'm doing something wrong. That is purely a projection of whatever issues that individual had going on. Everything at work, especially if it's unprofessional, if it's uncalled for, because there is a way to talk to people, to address people. If there is something that needs to be improved, there is a way to communicate that way in your job life, in your personal life. Because that person was unable to communicate effectively, decided to lash out, and they wouldn't take accountability for that, that's a reflection of them. That's them projecting their issues onto everyone else, having a power trip. I have no idea. I ended up going to the bathroom and crying. That was not great. It was rough. That was probably one of the lowest points. And that was maybe 2 months into my job. Just hang in there, y'all. And those one-off situations, it's not gonna be that way your entire career. But if you start seeing that being like a consistent trend, that's when you know you probably need to move on to some other firm or a different culture or a different team or whatever. If it becomes a recurring theme, check out my, my playlist about finding a new job and if you should move on to another job, because nothing is worth, you know, being degraded and disrespected. You want to learn from your mistakes. I'm going to learn from this mistake. Going forward, I'm going to try to be proactive about this. So around like 10:30, 11:30 or so, I'm gonna ask my seniors, hey, what would y'all like to eat today? Where can I order stuff from? Brush yourself off. Learn from that mistake, you know, somehow figure out a way to manage a bit better with, you know, that individual. That person didn't apologize to me. I just took it as, okay, they're never gonna apologize, so I'm gonna pretend like it didn't happen. I'm not gonna act like I have a bad attitude or take it out or be passive aggressive or whatever. I'm just going to keep going on my merry way. There are opportunities for you to go out of your comfort zone, to try something out, see if it works, and if it doesn't, you know what, it's a learning opportunity and you learn from your mistakes. When I was at the Big Four, I truly feel like there is this like sink or swim mentality. So you're gonna be thrown into something with very limited guidance. In public accounting, it's kind of like, here, I'm gonna give you this broad subject and I'm gonna see what you can do with it. And you can ask me questions as you need to, but I'm gonna rely on you to problem solve, to figure it out, and to ask for guidance when you need it. That's actually one of the reasons why I don't regret going into the Big Four or into public accounting in general. Like, I feel like that's a really good skill to be able to figure things out even when no one's telling you how to figure it out. And that's how you're gonna grow. You're gonna grow by trying things out, trial and error. Some things will work, some things won't. And I'm not saying do this all the time. Don't constantly try to reinvent the wheel or constantly try to like push yourself out of your comfort zone. As long as you're consistently doing that throughout your career, whenever that presents itself, then take those opportunities. You may not get them all the time. I know it kind of sounds like kind of scary now that I've described it. It doesn't sound all that great and glamorous and everything, but I promise y'all, I get this question a lot, like, do I regret going into public accounting? No, I don't regret it. And if I had to do it all over again, I would do the exact same thing. I would go into the Big Four, I would go into a mid-tier firm. I am the professional who I am because of the Big Four. From starting my career there, being very, very nitpicky about things, and obviously dialing back from it now that I'm not there, but having like a certain standard of working and a standard of like documenting, getting to do that, it does wonders for the rest of your career. Even the brief stint that I did in Big Four, I really feel like I learned so many valuable skills. It was hard. It was not easy to have learned those things. I was put through a lot of harder situations, and I'll link my Big Four experience story time if you want to hear more. This kind of piggybacks off of that. It takes a lot of grit to be in the Big Four and public accounting in general. It was invaluable for me. Even just having the short number of years being in the Big Four, like that makes you eligible for so many jobs. There are so many jobs out there, especially like manager and above jobs in industry. Some jobs will ask for just public accounting experience, but there are jobs out there that will say Big Four experience, and having just a few years of Big Four experience on your resume, that will do wonders. That will get you in front of a hiring manager, and then it's your job to wow them and make them want you. I think that's everything I wanted to talk about. I hope it was helpful. If it was, please be sure to give the video a thumbs up. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to be a part of our subby family because we would love to have you, and I will talk to y'all in my next video. What do you think, Juicy? Did you enjoy the content? Did you enjoy it? What did you think when Mama was a staff in the Big Four? Oh, yeah. I missed out on a lot of personal life stuff, but you know what? Sacrifice comes and you gotta do what you gotta do. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, you see that mean mugging face? That's how she felt. She was like, why aren't you home, girl? If y'all hear a bunch of screaming and hollering, I do apologize. My neighbors are having like a little birthday party for their kiddos, and the kids are having fun outside. It's like 109 degrees. I don't know how they're out there having fun for this long. I wish I could be outside for as long as they have been and like not be dying, because it has not let up for like hours. But I promise you, example. So you want to learn from your examples. I think it's better, hun. Pardon. Anyways. Sorry, the lighting is gonna go in and out. The lighting's going in and out, the dang clouds. Okay,